A to Z Sports. Sam Phelan here with you live today. We are live today, managed to make the live show work here from Indianapolis, talking NFL Scouting Combine. We are now through day 3, really, of the NFL Scouting Combine here in Indy with 2 more days to go. But had a chance to hear from Titans general manager Ran Carthon and head coach Brian Callahan. Have had a chance to talk to some of the players, including tight ends like Brock Bowers, cornerbacks, and defensive linemen, wide receivers, offensive linemen, all of that still to come later in the week. So just because we are recapping what we've learned so far does not mean we will not have more content to come later this week here with A to Z Sports. But I do want to talk about what we have learned about the Tennessee Titans, what I believe very strongly about the Tennessee Titans after the NFL Scouting Combine. Derek says you're watching the Titans groundbreaking. Who cares about the Titans groundbreaking? All right. The Titans groundbreaking is going to be a bunch of yada yada about, oh, wow, we have the same exact stadium as before. It's not going to be anything. We got some information. We got some real talk coming here on Titans at 2. You can go watch the groundbreaking summary later. You will join me live. I'll actually interact with you, Derek. Groundbreaking, you're not getting any interaction. So we're toughing it out. We're going on with the show, and we're talking NFL Scouting Combine because I really had a few very strong takeaways from what Ran Carthon and Brian Callahan had to say in their media availability. And I want to break them down for you guys now, why I believe that a lot of this is not a smokescreen, why I believe it's not a smokescreen, and hit on a few different points that point me towards what the Titans are going to do in free agency and what they're going to do in the NFL draft. Reminder that today's Titans at 2 is powered by the Youth Titans NFL Flag Football Leagues. They're the sponsor of today's show. They're in and around Nashville for a once-a-week program on Sundays for a total of 2 hours. The registration closes here coming up. The season will start in March and go through May for NFL Flag Football Leagues. It is boys and girls, pre-K through 5th grade. Again, a once-a-week program. It's on Sundays. Total of 2 hours, not a huge commitment, but allows kids from pre-K through 5th grade to enjoy football this spring, March through May. The link to sign up, the link for registration, the link to even find the adult flag football leagues is in the description of today's show. So go ahead and check that out. I am not at the groundbreaking. I am here in Indianapolis, and the Titans have left Indianapolis. They are not going to be meeting with these offensive linemen in person. They have to go and put some shovels in the ground, and as Derek says. So I am going to go ahead and talk about what I really came away feeling strongly about from the media availability that happened now on Tuesday, 2 days ago. And number one that we have to address is all of the different ways that I think Ran Carthon and Brian Callahan pointed towards drafting a wide receiver number 7 overall. I think both in what they directly said and in reading between the tea leaves of other things that they said, I feel stronger than ever right now that a wide receiver is probably going to be the pick at 7. Obviously, a lot can change. Obviously, they call this lying season and a season of deception where teams are putting out information that they want out there. But really, 3 main things happened. The Titans addressed the need for a wide receiver and a long-term wide receiver. The Titans acknowledged the depth at offensive line in this draft class and referred on multiple occasions to Bill Callahan as an option to give them offensive line later in the draft. And then number 3, Brian Callahan straight up said that this was his preference to go with wide receivers. I don't believe trading down is all that realistic. Let's just start there. This time last year, Ran Carthon got up to his media availability and said, hey, fellas, all you guys out there, you have my phone number. You guys got my number. Go ahead and hit me up. We're open for business here in Tennessee. He was pretty active about the idea of making a trade, whether that was trading up to go get a quarterback or potentially trading back. The Titans were listening. This year, Rand was singing a bit of a different tune. Rand basically said, I like 7. Now, of course, I'm open, but what else is he supposed to say as a general manager? Uh, I think that he is less inclined to trade back from 7 than he is to stick at 7 and take one of the elite talents. Billy Jones believes 3 wide receivers might go before 7. I don't think that's a realistic scenario. I believe you're more likely to see 4 quarterbacks go before 7 than 3 wide receivers. 3 quarterbacks guaranteed. But I would be surprised if Arizona, the Chargers, and the Giants all went wide receiver. I think the Chargers are going to take an offensive lineman. That feels like the pick that makes a lot of sense for Jim Harbaugh. But anyways, I don't think the Titans are going to trade down. I think they're going to stick at 7. I think that is the smart move. The elite talent in this draft class between the 3 wide receivers that we've talked about with Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., those 3, and then your 2 offensive tackles with Olu Fashanu and Joe Alt. I think that top-end talent is way too good to justify trading back. If you trade back and you get a 3rd-round pick or whatever it is, but then you're coming away from the 1st round with like a J.C. Latham or a player that I feel is fairly significantly below the caliber of these starting wide receivers, I'm not sure you feel as good about that as you do drafting the stud. But let's get into these reasons. Let's get into the video. And this really started for me becoming a thing by listening to what Rand Carthon had to say about the depth of wide receiver and offensive line in this draft and how the Titans are going to have to balance and weigh what they could potentially get later on, referring to that 2nd-round pick.
We're really deep at receiver in this draft and O-line as a whole, which are 2 areas that we're going to be focusing on. But it's a really deep class, a lot of talented young men, and we're looking forward to meeting with them throughout this process. If you look at it strategically, it's about the value, right? So if you're sitting there and there's a receiver there, knowing that there's a deep O-line class, it's like, all right, where can we supplement this position later? So it's about playing those 2 parts off of each other, whether that's in free agency as well, in the draft. So it's about trying to mix and match those 2 pieces.
So obviously the Titans are going to have to weigh, hey, maybe there's an elite wide receiver and an elite offensive lineman on the board, but maybe they feel better about the depth at offensive line than they do at wide receiver. And I find it interesting that is the exact scenario Rand Carthon refers to. If we're sitting there and there's a wide receiver available and we like the depth at O-line, you might have to pull the trigger on the receiver. Maybe you've got an O-lineman that's right here on your board and a wide receiver that's right here on your board, and they're pretty neck and neck, but you feel like the depth at O-line gives you a strategic opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. That was the first thing that Rand said that kind of had my ears perking up to, okay, well, that would suggest maybe there is a wide receiver that they could take. And then he began talking about Bill Callahan, the Titans' new offensive line coach, and how Bill Callahan just put on a clinic with his tape of how to train and coach pass protection and how to evaluate these prospects. And everybody was really, really impressed with what Bill Callahan had to say. He mentioned that by having a guy like Bill Callahan on the Titans coaching staff, the exact words he used, it gives them leeway when drafting offensive linemen. Maybe the Titans feel more comfortable taking a swing on potential in the 2nd round, potential of an offensive tackle in the 5th round, and not necessarily using elite draft capital on that guy because they believe in Bill Callahan. Rand also made a comment about, well, you're not always going to, or Brian Callahan, sorry, made a comment about, well, it's not always going to be the same 5 and you're going to have to do different combinations, almost feeling like the Titans could just fix their offensive line by adding multiple dudes that fit in different packages and have a lot of depth and are just really well coached. So that became even more of a possibility. And then Rand started talking about the value of a premier wide receiver and the Titans putting an emphasis on fixing it.
Not a problem.
No, I mean that's a part of it. Like we got a young offensive coach who's an offensive-minded coach who's going to need weapons to bring his offense to life, and so we have a responsibility, in finding that. I think we were, lucky to get a guy like D-Hop, and we know D-Hop's a little older, but he produced at a high level, had a 1,000-yard season. I think he had 6 touchdowns, one of his highest yards per carry, average, probably in recent years, but probably highest in his career. But again, we want to make sure that we're still explosive, that we can make plays down the football field, which we feel is going to help our offense and our young quarterback. I think we'd always look for a premier wide receiver, whether it's for the next 2 years, 3 years, or 10 years. Like Paul said, he just informed me that it's been a problem for 25 years, and so we want to solve that. But again, in order for Will to be successful, he has to have playmakers around him, because he can't throw the ball to himself. He can't, hand the ball to himself, if you will. So we got to continue to add playmakers.
If Will can't throw the ball to himself, can't catch the ball himself, we want to solve the 25-year problem. Rand Carthon putting an emphasis on getting a premier wide receiver, and as Rashid says, the Titans will have to draft another one to replace DeAndre Hopkins next year, hypothetically. Like, you feel okay about the wide receiver room with D-Hop because of D-Hop, but understand he has 1 year left on his contract. I think it is paramount for the Titans to get a wide receiver that is not just elite in his skill set and a playmaker that makes Will Levis's job easier, but a wide receiver that will be here with Will Levis when that new stadium that you are currently breaking ground on, when that place opens, this wide receiver needs to be playing there. You need to get a guy now that's going to be doing what Jamar Chase did for Joe Burrow, and what you have seen the recipe being what A.J. Brown has started to do for Jalen Hurts, what Stephon Diggs for Josh Allen, a long-term solution. Justin Jefferson in Minnesota. I believe the Titans are in a position at 7 to get that guy. I don't know if they will ever be in that good of a position. And by the way, what have we learned this offseason already? That these elite wide receiver talents, these 1,000-yard guys, don't really make it to free agency. They get franchise tagged or extended. They are not very often available, and available at an age where they're still in their prime. If you want that guy for his best years, you have to draft him, and you probably have to draft him early, and you probably have to do it this year. Now, I understand there is this debate, wide receiver versus offensive line. Do you take wide receiver over offensive line? And yes, Rand said, hey, Will can't throw the ball to himself. Will can't block for himself either. That is a fact. Here's what Brian Callahan has to say. The guy that scores the touchdowns is more valuable.
At the end of the day, the NFL is about scoring points, and having people that can score points is important. I would say that situation and our situation are probably very different, both in who those players are and where we are in our process. So, we were going into year 3, and Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell, I think, were kind of unanimously considered to be all-pro caliber players. They've both lived up to that billing, and so it's a different set of players, different set of circumstances. But I'll always lean, when all things are equal, guys that can score touchdowns tend to make more of an impact.
All the talk about receivers.
I didn't see a smoke screen there. I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, the Titans are going to say whatever. That felt very from the gut from Brian Callahan, in my opinion. A guy who is just saying, I'll always lean the guy that scores the touchdowns. I get the feeling that's where things are going for the Titans. Now, does that mean Brock Bowers? Does that mean a tight end? He doesn't really play a traditional tight end spot. Maybe you believe Brock Bowers is the best long-term weapon to match up with Will Levis. But I think if I'm high on Rome Odunze, I think Malik Neighbors is in the same class as Marvin Harrison Jr. There's nobody in this draft I would draft over Malik Neighbors if he was available. Of course, like referring to the people realistically will be there. If there's a world where it's Joe Alt or Malik Neighbors, I would take Malik Neighbors. If it's Olu Fashanu or Malik Neighbors, I would take Malik Neighbors. I think the conversation becomes a little bit more of a debate when you start putting a Joe Alt against the Brock Bowers or a Joe Alt against the Rome Odunze. But I really feel like wide receiver is the way to go. I feel like that's where the Titans are leaning. I feel even stronger about that after listening to them speak at the Combine. And I am very pumped for tomorrow. Tomorrow, we will hear from these wide receivers. The wide receivers will be at the podium speaking. So I'll have a chance to talk to all of these big names, Neighbors, Harrison, Odunze, even guys into the second round, like Adonai Mitchell. Like we're going to get to hear from all the wide receivers that could potentially be targets for the Titans. And as Lucas says, LSU got a pretty good track record. So I feel good about all three of these guys, which is why I feel strongly that this is where the Titans need to go and fix the other problems as best as you can right now. One other strong takeaway I had from this that is kind of off topic. It's not about the first round pick. I can tell you that much. Not about the first round pick, but a strong takeaway I had from the Carthon-Callahan media availability coming up in a moment. But first, got to tell everybody about my sponsor for the show. It's the Aura app, because anyone can find anything online, and the internet is a dangerous place. So whether it's your full name, personal email, home address, phone number, relatives, internet's dangerous and people can find your stuff. Aura found 30 data brokers that had my information, removed it from them, thankfully, so that I no longer get bothered by robocallers and telemarketers and spammers, because those data brokers, they sell your information to the people that then bother you. They also have a VPN, a password manager, real-time credit and identity theft monitoring. In a digital world, it can be difficult to keep safe online. So let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe and use our code aura.com/ATOZ to get a 2-week free trial. So just try it for free first. Aura.com/ATOZ to get a 2-week free trial on the Aura app. Let's see. I did get the top attic room, as you can see in this Airbnb. Please disregard the spiders on the wall. I'm in an Airbnb right now. I'm trying to do my best. We're trying to power through here. And the scheduling was a little awkward, so I couldn't do the live show from the stadium this afternoon. But thank you for feeling sympathy to me, Anthony. Bowers or Neighbors? Neighbors, DeMarco. Neighbors. I think Malik Neighbors is different. I think he's a premier wide receiver. Brock Bowers, I think, is a surefire good tight end. Most likely a very good tight end. I don't know if he is a guaranteed to be an elite tight end. Tight ends just translate very odd. Some of them hit, some of them don't. And so I think he's going to be very productive, but I'm not sure I see the guarantee of like an elite pass catching weapon. Like there's a chance Brock Bowers is just like an 80 catch, 800-yard tight end for forever. And that would be a very awesome career, and it would be worthwhile drafting him. But I think right now I'd rather shoot higher, and I think Malik Neighbors has the chance to be a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. So I think you pull that trigger if you get the opportunity to, in my opinion. My other takeaway, Malik Willis is not going to be this team's backup quarterback. That's my assertion. After hearing them speak about the importance of the position, I think Malik Willis is absolutely in trouble in 2024 and will have to do a lot to fight for a job on this team. Rand Carthon did confirm that the Titans are going to add a quarterback this offseason, either in the draft or in free agency. What I thought was going to be a position that I didn't care about here in Indianapolis, quarterback, has turned into one that I'm going to kick the tires on. Now, I'm not going to talk to J.J. McCarthy and Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels or Drake May or any of the top guys, but I might look to some of the quarterbacks that could be available in like the 6th, 7th round and see if they've had conversations with the Titans, because as Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon both talked about, it's a position they're looking into. So here's what Rand had to say about backup quarterback. Here's what Brian Callahan had to say about backup quarterback. And then I'll give you my thoughts on why I think it's bad news for Malik.
Last 2 years, how important that spot is.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to continue to look. We have Malik in-house, and, I mean, we're not going to go into training camp with just two quarterbacks. We're going to bring another quarterback in at some point, whether that's through the draft, whether that's through free agency, to compete. And we expect all three of those guys in the room to compete and elevate the level of that room.
You need a veteran. You need a veteran guy to kind of go into that mix because you've got two young ones.
I think we're going to mix and match and see what's the best fit. You know, again, we're still in the evaluation process. Like I said, when we get back, we have our free agency meeting with our coaches, and that'll give us a little bit more insight in how we're going to do it moving forward. But we're still very much in the evaluating process.
I think you want a guy first and foremost that can play, because if they have to play, you want to be able to get out of a 2, 3, 4 game stretch, and hopefully not an 8 or 9 game stretch like Jake Browning had to get us out of last year. But you want a guy that can first and foremost play the position. There's another element of backup quarterbacks that's really important, is how they are in the room with the starter, and that matters. That relationship can be very fruitful. It can also be very damaging if it's not on the same page. And so having a starter with a backup quarterback that's there to help, that assists, that sees things through the quarterback's set of eyes, can be very helpful on game day with the starting quarterback. It's a role that I think is probably undervalued publicly, but you talk to most coaches around the league, that value of that position I think is pretty high. So to have a guy that can be in that role, that can, 1, play, and 2, help the starter is important.
So a couple of things there. Obviously, Rand Carthon says they're going to bring in a quarterback. I thought it was interesting too, just saying, hey, we're going to bring in a quarterback to compete, like, for this job. You'll see teams bring in undrafted free agent quarterbacks all the time to just be training camp bodies, and they very rarely have a realistic chance of making the team. I do think the Titans, clearly, as Brian Callahan says, it's an underrated position just nationally, and to most people, they don't realize how valuable a backup quarterback is. I think this is something they're going to make an investment in. I do think a free agent is more likely than a draft pick. But I think they're going to get somebody to compete for this job, and I think that's bad news for Malik Willis. I think when you listen to what Brian Callahan says about what they're going to be looking for in the position, it's somebody who's ready to plug and play, somebody who can go in there. And so the Titans have always valued the upside that Malik Willis has, some of the physical arm talent and speed and athleticism. Some of those things are there with him, but he has been and still is, in my eyes, a developmental piece. He is a project that you could potentially develop into something, but he's not there right now. We have no reason to believe he's there. And you can only hold out that hope for so long. If the Titans want a guy that they feel 100% confident can go in and start, that's not Malik Willis. And, oh, by the way, I think it's important for that backup who can go in and play to have a similar play style to the starter so that they can run the same offense. Brian Callahan did that last year in Cincinnati when Jake Browning took over for Joe Burrow. Jake Browning is a worse version of Joe Burrow, but they have a similar skill set where it was an easy transition for Cincinnati to make. I think that worked out really well, and you saw the importance of that backup quarterback position. So I see a lot of you guys are saying, hey, let's go into free agency. I would agree. I think that is the way to go. I think there's a lot of guys. Drew Lock has been one that you guys have commented that I would be in on. Jameis Winston is available. Taylor Heineke, I believe, is also available. Some other names, Mitchell Trubisky. I like Mitchell Trubisky as a backup. I think that would be a very good addition. Sam Darnold is another one that comes to mind for me. Guys who can play out of play action, who can just be stable backups in a quarterback room that, yeah, you don't want starting for you. But if you have to play one game with Sam Darnold, play one game with Drew Lock, play one game with Mitchell Trubisky, you can survive and you can get by in that context. So those are some names to keep an eye on. But I think this is a position group the Titans are going to prioritize. They are going to pay one of these backups. They're going to bring somebody in behind Will Levis. I think Malik Willis is in big trouble as far as holding a backup job in 2024. Does that mean he's out of a roster spot entirely? I don't know, but I don't think if you're the Titans, you can go into this season with Malik as that second quarterback, because Will Levis has already had some injury history as a rookie and in his college career. I think you have to plan that a clean bill of health might not always be in the cards for him. So that was a big takeaway I had as well. I was surprised that they kind of gave up some of that information and talked about backup quarterback that openly. But I think Titans fans should focus on that as well as another need. I will be back with you guys on Monday, and we are going to talk about those wide receivers that I'm going to get to talk to tomorrow and get to watch in practice. We're going to talk about some cornerbacks that I think could be good late round additions. And all of this stuff, all of this content is going to be on A-to-Z-Sports.com. I'm rolling out articles about what the Titans need and what players to watch for in the NFL draft as it gets closer here, as I get to talk to some guys, as we get to hear what the strategy might be. But if you're taking anything out of this week from me, the Titans are probably going to stick at 7. I think they take a wide receiver, and a backup quarterback and a new backup quarterback is coming to Music City. Go ahead, go watch some people shove some shovels into the dirt if you want to, but leave a like on the show before you do it, and go head over to the groundbreaking if you so choose. I personally will not. Till next time, tighten up. Thanks for joining me, guys. We'll see you later.